production and diffusion, dissemination of works of art, of cultural works. We have three people in the panel that will discuss this issue with each other as well as with you. Before they start a discussion, they will elaborate upon their own position in a couple of minutes. They will introduce themselves, then elaborate on their position. Each of these does that, and then there will be some clarification issues, time for that. Then the discussion starts by discussion amongst them, but I would very much like to also ask you if you have questions or issues that you'd like to raise, to do so. Indicate this to me. There's a mic over there, and you can raise your issues or questions. And the only thing that I would like to ask is to abide by two rules that I would like to have this afternoon. One rule is to always be polite. The only person that is allowed not to be polite is myself. The organizers have asked me to behave as a kind of god, and I will do so. So if somebody is not polite, I will ask for that interruption, that intervention to be cut. Okay, that's rule number one. Rule number two is not to be too technical. Both in legal terms as well as in IT or technical terms. So do not use too technical language, too technical arguments. Now, before I turn, so I will allow the speakers of the panel to introduce themselves, and if you want to address me with a question, my name is Wilfred Dolsma. And I'm a professor of innovation studies at the University of Groningen. So address me as Wilfred, and that's going to be fine. I think that's polite enough. Okay, so 3 minutes each for the three panelists, and we'll start with Tim Kuik. Tim, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon. My name is Tim Kuik. I'm the director of a foundation which is named Brein. Thank you. We do, thank you, we do copyright enforcement, meaning that what we believe is that if you create something, you've got something, but you can only really exploit that something if you can protect it, and the protection is what we do. We don't really mind whether you give your work away or whether you charge for it or whatever model you use. It's your decision and not somebody else's. So that's what we stand for, and that's what we do. I mean, I was on holiday, like many of you. I was sitting on a terrace, and a guy came up to me, and he was selling DVDs. And lo and behold, they were not legal copies. So I said, no, thank you. And he said, no, but they're the latest films. Why don't you want them? And I said, well, I work for the creative industry. I work for filmmakers. And he said, oh, you're in the business too. So that's what we're up against.
Thank you, Tim. Yeah.
Good afternoon. My name is Walter van Holst. In daily life, I'm an IT lawyer. I also happen to be a volunteer at Vrijschrift, which is Scriptum Libre for the Dutch impaired among you. And Scriptum Libre is about the preservation and creation and sharing of culture, and that also involves the preservation of the public domain, the creation of new common material, such as Scriptum Libre has been involved in the Dutch version of OpenStreetMaps. We've also been involved in lobbying against software patents. Quite a few of our people are heavily involved in the Gutenberg project. More low-key, we've been lobbying against extension of the performing rights So that's more or less what we do, and our position is that the creation of new material is highly dependent on access to existing material, whether it's really old material, fairly recent. And we feel that that a draconian enforcement of copyright in its current form is more of an impediment to the creation of new material than the wholesale infringement of copyright as it is going on right now. And basically we are in favor of a thorough reconstruction of intellectual rights, such as a reduction of the term of copyright, abolishment of database rights, and abolishment of patent law. Thank you.
My name is Arjen Kamphuis. Normally I work in open source lobbying and IT things, and picking sides in a fight like this is sort of a hobby that got a bit out of hand. My position on copyright is that it's a really cool idea, but the current implementation seriously sucks. Human beings have been making culture in all kinds of ways for about 15,000 years. And about for 100 years we've been putting some of that on little plastic discs or tapes. That 100 years was the 20th century and it's now over. So now I think we can move beyond some of those models. Just like with the last 5 other switches from one sort of technology to another. So we had the piano player in the 1890s, where then the musicians started saying, oh, this technology will destroy us. And of course, more music was made, and then the music was put into records, and other people became very upset because that was destroying their business model. And then other people started playing those records on the radio, and then the people who made the records got very upset, and so on and so on. And we went through VHS video recorders and MP3 technology, and now we are in little hard disks and smart cards. And what we see every time, basically, is that there are a bunch of people who have grown really fat and wealthy of the existing situation, who will then defend that existing situation even when it has basically passed. And my personal position is I never watch broadcast anything anymore, yet I don't miss anything, and I have a home network with a couple of terabytes of stuff, all of which I own legally, by the way, because of the Dutch situation where I can download legally as long as I don't trade it. So that's my personal view on it.
Okay, thank you for your elaboration of your position. Is there anything that you want to add at this point? Okay, let's. As far as I'm concerned, there's plenty of things to discuss. Let me add one bit based upon your introduction. For instance, Walter, you say you want to reconstruct. Can you be a little bit more concrete?
Yeah.
What do you want to reconstruct and how do you want to reconstruct?
For starters, I would be in favor of a reduction of the term of copyright to maybe around 15 years. Maybe with the possibility to extend it through registration, which is completely opposite of what the Berne Convention says since 1883, I think. Another thing is there's a lot of distinctions made between various kinds of work, like software. Software is treated in a really weird way in copyright law, which makes it in fact impossible to criticize or to quote software. I would like to make the copyright protection of software dependent on the publication of the source code, for example. And I would also like to fix the really poor situation authors are in when negotiating contracts with the distributors.
Okay, thank you. Another thing is, Arjen, you said that copyright is a good idea, but the implementation sucks. Can you give a concrete example of what, in your eyes, sucks most?
I think that because of sort of the power imbalance between large content companies who've had, a century to build up capital and big organizations and teams of lawyers versus individual artists who tend to be young, poor, and uneducated in the ways of the law. So there's a massive power imbalance there, combined with copyright extensions that are sort of moving in the direction of eternity minus a day, when originally it was 14 years, in an age when things moved a lot slower than today. So I think those two aspects combine to make a situation where it seems that the law is now serving a limited number of companies and no longer serves us. And I think that's always a good point where you have to say to society, well, either we're going to change the law the nice way through our parliaments, or we're going to change the law the not so nice way by just being massively civil disobedient, and then at some point the whole system will fail. And I'd like to do the first thing, which I think is a bit more sort of orderly and leads to less arrests and all kinds of other, unhappiness. But if necessary, then we'll take the second route.
Okay, that's a threat. To ask you to respond to that, yes.
No, yeah, okay. What I think is that copyright is good for the small, independent creator. And if you feel that there are large corporations that are abusing copyright, I think, in essence, copyright gives the individual creator the power to negotiate with large corporations. If you feel there's an imbalance there, you need to address that, not by diminishing the right of that individual creator, but by anti-competition regulation and perhaps a contract law at the moment there is in development in the Netherlands a model contract law for copyright, which basically seeks to address the balance between individual creators and large corporations.
And what about the length? Maybe that's also an issue that
Well, again there, if you look at the internet, one of the theories is that the internet can seek profitability for creation through the long tail. Now, if you have to have a long tail, you need to have long protection. So, you need to find a balance for sure. But again, the individual creator that wishes to live from his creations needs, a long protection. I don't know whether 15 years would be enough.
Well, I think there should be a balance between the interests of society as a whole. I think we've seen a bunch of fairly solid studies from places like Oxford that says sort of the societal economic optimum for copyright is something in the order of 10 years. And it might be a bit more for certain things and a bit less for other things, but that's sort of a number that keeps coming up. I think it would be a good idea to sort of to go there with the possibility to lengthen it maybe for individual authors if they so choose. But right now we have an existing situation where literally a handful of companies has sewn up pretty much a large part of the global cultural heritage and is holding on to it for literally decades, while they themselves actually came about by not following copyrights and patents. I mean, the reason Hollywood is on the West Coast is because it was 3,000 miles away from the East Coast where Mr. Edison had a bunch of patents. So everybody went west, screwed Edison over his patents, and then they built a film industry based on that, and we all watch that stuff now. So it's a bit funny that those same people are now, calling us pirates. I think they're, those are the people in Somalia. I don't know. I've never, entered a ship on sea that way, with an AK-47 or anything. So, but it seems to be strange to me that while many countries and corporations actually thank their existence and their current success based on not sticking to those rules which they now ask us to stick to, it makes it a bit, I don't know, I don't feel a lot of sympathy for them when they say that, they're having a hard time or anything. It makes it a bit sort of difficult.
Okay, you want to...
I don't know whether that's true. I mean, I think filmmakers went to Los Angeles because of the light, and the good weather.
What is also true?
They didn't have these lamps in the beginning. They needed good light.
What is also true is that U.S. Citizens were not allowed to pay license fees on copyrighted material to foreigners. up until the 1960s. I don't know the exact date, but anyway. Walter.
I'd like to respond to Tim's remark that, well, the proper way to change copyright law is not through also downloading. And I'm going to make a very unpopular statement given the amount of Pirate Bay shirts in the audience. I won't shed a tear about the Pirate Bay. Having said that, the Pirate Bay is useful because it proves that there is a problem. And I think Tim is completely wrong about saying that, well, they have the normal lawmaking process. The lawmaking process is hijacked by special interest groups, and you have a very diffuse common interest, which is not represented in a good way in our current democratic system. And I'm not claiming that we should burn down democracy, on the contrary, but especially when you look at the, again, extension on top of performing rights and copyrights, you see that every time you see the small group which has a vested interest, and especially the distributors and not the creators, push through changes in the law because there's no real genuine pushback from a common interest perspective. And only the recent case of the software patents which were proposed in the European level, I think it's a pretty exceptional case where people pushed back on that front.
Tim, you want to respond to that before we go to the audience?
Yeah, I had a thought about that, but it's sort of.
You don't have to.
me.
You don't have,
Sorry?
maybe you can, if you want to think it over a little bit, you can respond to that later.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, let's open up the floor to the audience. I've already seen a number of hands coming up. Please move to the microphone. There's a microphone in the middle. And remember, be concise, but also be polite. Okay, go ahead.
Well, I have a funny example of the interests of corporations represented in copyright law. You know, some quite popular songs from the 50s, which have been recycled numbers of times, are now threatened or at risk of becoming public domain. So, what do the large corporations do? They're not going to land back and say, well, we accept defeat, it's now public domain. No, they send armies of lobbyists to Europe and our national government to extend the copyright law, to extend the time it's all protected. That's the way that's the way corporations work. We as the people are no longer represented by the copyright law.
And your point is that will not stimulate creation of new work by these people who have created that in the 1950s or 60s.
No, not at
okay.
all. It's just in the interest of corporations, not our interest.
Well, yeah, okay, but remember, copyright also has the purpose of protecting those who invest in the production of something which is newly created. But okay, you want to respond to that?
Yeah.
Arjen? First Arjen,
no,
then Tim. Yeah.
Well, I mean, since in Europe most of the countries are still nominally democracies, I think we do get a little bit of sort of the government we deserve. If all of us together, download the hell out of our DSL line, but don't write an email every now and then to our representatives in Brussels, then yes, we're going to get screwed over by lobbyists. I mean, the funny thing is there's many more of us, and we're smarter, of course, yet we keep losing. So obviously we're doing something wrong.
Money, maybe?
If there are more people in most European countries that have downloaded music or other content than have voted for the current prime ministers of those countries. So why aren't they listening? Well, mostly because we're not saying anything. And so maybe if we would, do, while you're downloading that stuff, I mean, the thing, it takes a while anyway, still. Take some time out and write a courteous email to your member of parliament in Europe.
I think
Okay,
the Pirate
Tim
Bay
first.
was an interesting gesture.
Wait a second, Tim first. Yeah.
Yeah, I think also you're complaining about large corporations. Now, there's of course not only large corporations out there. There's also small ones. There's also people who individually seek to get remunerated for their creative work. The issue is, I think, also, or the thought I have by hearing your remark, is that it's not in the interest of these large corporations or anyone who is distributing a copyrighted work to not distribute it, to sit on it, to lock it up and have nobody listen to it or watch it. The industry, if you wish, and the drive is to create it and to make it available. The question is, can you earn money with your creative product? So the industry wants the information to be free in the sense that you can obtain it, but they also want a remuneration for it so that they can pay for new work to be created. That's the principle. So it's not to lock it up, but to get payment.
I'd like to add to that we indeed shouldn't frame the discussion in terms of faceless corporations screwing us over, or however romantic that may sound. I mean, the same phenomenon you see in agricultural policy, where you happen to have voting blocks being the farmers. So I don't like to put it that way. On the other hand, what Tim says is we would like to make things available. That reeks of hypocrisy, given the fight the content industry is putting up in making all the works digitally available. I mean, I don't have access to the back catalog of most large record companies through a legal download service. At least now it's changing, but it took them about 10 years after Napster to come to the realization that the digital area is there. It's a bit slow on the uptake.
Personally, I'd love to pay, maybe somewhere in the area of 50 to 100 euros per month to be able to, get all the stuff I now get anyway, without paying for it. If that means I never get, compared again to people robbing ships at sea. I mean, I think, if that means that I never have to worry about any of those issues again, and we can also dump the levy on certain media in the Netherlands, in a couple other countries, I think that would be a good solution, but actually it's not a solution that is offered to me.
Okay, let's go to a second. Do you have a, please ask a different kind of question so that we don't get to repeat ourselves.
Okay, well, let me, instead of asking a question, make an observation or two. I think it's really scary if we move to one end or the opposite end in this debate, either where everybody copies everything and the content creators can't do anything about it, or the other end where the content creators get to control everything in perpetuity and can push a button and the book disappears from my book reader, that kind of stuff. And as an author, not a faceless corporation, look, I have a face, and I actually get royalties. I paid for my trip here with the royalties from one of my books. So I get royalties. And now for some strange reason, if 30 years in the future when I'm old and gray and I don't have a pension because I was writing books, I didn't have a good job that built me lots of pension. So if the book still sells, would it be fair for the people that sell the books, the stores, the government with the VAT, the publishers, the printers, everyone, to make money off of that book? But I wouldn't get anything because the copyright has expired? I don't think that's fair.
Well, copyright will not have expired, certainly not before you will have died, but anyway.
So,
do you have a, yeah?
So you, in order to create those books, you use lots of knowledge that was given to you by a society that spent, several 10,000 years building up that knowledge. You don't have to pay. Most of those people who figured out, how to do all the things that makes it possible for you to even learn to write and have a house, and so there's a ton of knowledge that makes your life possible, and you get that for free essentially. So then why is it that we need to protect your knowledge? I'm not saying I want to abolish copyright. I'm saying, protection into perpetuity might be a bit ridiculous given the amount of knowledge that you have gotten for free from a society. I'm a technology consultant. I can't write a report and then live off that for 50 years. I have to write something new every month. Otherwise I don't get paid.
And by the way, being able to travel to this country based on your royalties is quite a feat because, for instance, most musicians get a paltry amount of money for their creations. In the UK, it's known to be on average £20 a year. So I don't know if that stimulates, but anyway.
Sorry. No, I agree with the person who asked the question. The thing is that this stuff is made available. It's made available either by a book publisher or it's made available on the Pirate Bay. And these people are making money with it. The Pirate Bay is making money with the fact that these works are made available via the Pirate Bay. You can find them there. They're making money of it. And it is totally unreasonable that an author should not share in that money.
I think yeah.
Well, may I start to congratulate the gentleman with the fact that he is earning royalties, which puts him in the bracket of about only 5% of the authors which really get any royalties out of what they create. If you frame the discussion in terms of fairness, is it fair that the automobile manufacturer who made a car, which Tim says you wouldn't download or you wouldn't steal one in his sponsored TV adverts here in Dutch television, that until 70 years after his death, he will be still getting money from making that car, which he can't enjoy having because he had sold it ages ago, whereas the creator of a book, which can still enjoy the book he wrote, his descendants still can earn royalties over that. There's a disparity there, and at the end of the day, you probably never get to an agreement what is really fair or what is not fair, but you can prove what is an incentive for people to write books.
Okay, let's go to. Yeah, please go ahead.
How can it be that if there are such large penalties on downloading music, that nearly everyone is still using LimeWire to download music? How can that be? How you try to fight LimeWire?
Sorry, I didn't hear your question. Sorry, could you repeat it?
Why are so many people still using LimeWire to download music? That's the question, right?
Yeah.
Given that the penalties are so high.
Why are they still doing that?
Why-
Probably
why-
because it's free.
Because it's free and because making the rules stick is a lot of work, right?
Well, you know, if the LimeWire were in Holland, of course, we would have solved that problem already. But it's in the United States and litigation is pending there.
I would say that at the end of the day, it also boils down to the feel. It doesn't make you feel as bad as robbing an old woman from her bag would be on the street if you download this song.
All right, but how do you try to fight LimeWire? Do you go to houses and break in and go on their computer and see that they have LimeWire and then you arrest them? Or how do you try to fight it?
No, basically, you know, I personally believe that you shouldn't really impede people's freedom. So, you know, I'm not in favor of what you're saying, go to individuals, people's houses and look at what they're doing. But, you know, people who want something on the internet, they go to places on the internet, websites and web services, where they get access to that stuff. And those places are really the new shops. That's where people get access, and it's all about access. Now, those are the central points, and those central points have a responsibility, just like a bookshop or a record shop has a responsibility. And that shop on the internet should take care that its shelves, so to speak, are clean, and that is how I propose to enforce copyright on the internet.
I get that they have a responsibility, but what do you actually do about it?
What do we do about it, or what they do about it?
Your Brein corporation, how does it fight those things? Because I know that they have a responsibility, all those companies, but what do you fight? How do you fight it? Do you arrest the guys that host the LimeWire or the sites where they can download?
I think...
No, we're a private foundation. We use civil law means, so basically we write to the website owners. If those owners are anonymous then, and do not react, then we basically go to the hosting providers and get the site closed down. But if the owners of the site are traceable, then we will approach those owners and we will discuss with them what they can do. But if their site makes structural use of the availability of illegal content out on the internet, then they will have to take measures. We can discuss with them what those measures are, but if they don't take those measures, we will force the site to be closed down. So we take, in the end, if there's a conflict, we can resolve it. We take civil litigation as the judge to issue an injunction against that site.
Okay. Yeah. Let's go to the, and maybe you can talk afterwards if you want to, into those details. Yeah, why don't you go ahead?
Yes, I have a couple of questions and observation. First one that popped up to Mr. Tim. You said that the Pirate Bay is making a lot of profit from distributing copyrighted works. Can you please tell me where that profit is? Because I'd like some of it.
Yeah. Well, I would say you tell me, you're here, somebody paid for your trip.
Yes, I paid for this trip by developing computer software.
Sorry?
I paid for this trip by developing computer software for my customers.
Mm-hmm. Well, everybody knows, including yourself, that you're selling on your website advertising space, and people pay you for that. And in Sweden, an investigative journalist has looked into what your site is earning, and they've basically discovered that you make already in the Scandinavian countries hundreds of thousands of kroner. Well, and besides, somebody is also offering to pay you about, what is it, 6 or 7 million for your site? So,
about 7 including shares, but that doesn't prove the site is making a profit, since take YouTube for example, it has never shown a single cent in profit, and despite that it was sold for several billions of dollars.
Yeah. Okay, you made your point, I think.
Yes, and to the guy to the left, I don't.
The sound is rather poor. Can someone fix that? Or
the guy to the left, I don't remember your name. You said that you wouldn't cry if the Pirate Bay disappeared, but that it has proven a point, that it has shown that there is a problem, and I totally agree with that. The point of the Pirate Bay has never been to exist forever, but the problem now is that we more or less have a stalemate in the situation. I mean, the Pirate Bay is not going away, and the anti-copyright mafia is not going away. So we have to.
I disagree on that with you. Allow me to disagree with you.
I think that's on the boundary of being impolite, right? Okay.
Allow me to disagree with you. I'm quite strongly on the opinion that the current distributors, and I mean the record and film industry, I'm not talking about the creators, but about the distributors, are being swept away and becoming more and more irrelevant by digital distribution. So the stalemate will end. It won't end in a year, it won't end in 10 years, but in a few decades it will all be gone. At least the distribution companies will have to be transformed. They're just dinosaurs struggling to stay alive in a world where the mammals are taking over.
Exactly, but how is the current situation going to develop, in your opinion, in the next couple of years or so?
I'm afraid you're going to be crushed in the process. That's
one
sad
of the
in itself. At the end of the day, the reason I said I wouldn't shed a tear over it is I'm not going to disagree with Tim that the Pirate Bay was facilitating or is facilitating, and I have participated in that. I'm rather sure there's still some BitTorrent client running at home right now in wholesale copyright infringement. And you cannot expect a lack of any reaction to that. You have been playing with fire and you're getting your fingers burned. And maybe a lot more than you would have expected or anyone else would have expected. But you have been playing with fire near to a pile of explosives. And it's blowing up in your face right now. which is not nice to happen to you.
Well, at least in Sweden, people have been listening to Arjen's advice to vote on a political party that is campaigning on this piracy issue or this copying issue. So that's at least one thing that they have listened to. Yeah.
Just to make a point, I've been following the whole Pirate Bay case with interest, but I think for the bigger picture and for the sort of how this all turns out in 10 or 15 years from now, it doesn't really matter that much. I think in 25 years, we'll have a repeat of the conversation that an American Army colonel once had with a Vietnamese Army colonel. They met each other in the mid-80s, and the American colonel said to the Vietnamese colonel, you know, you guys never defeat us in battle. And the Vietnamese colonel said, that is true, but also irrelevant. And so the point is that the US Department of Defense gave us this really cool machine, which primary function seems to be to copy bits and then slap them around the planet. And it works really, really well. And so copying bits is never going to be harder than it is today. It's only going to be easier and cheaper and faster. So I think the end point of this discussion is, given that development is pretty much set. And then, you know, the question is, how do we take care of artists who we don't want to starve? That's an interesting discussion. But the fact that everything eventually will be available, you know, in a flash on any device anywhere on the planet, I think in the slightly longer term, that's basically a given.
And may I add?
Yeah, you know, just to be sure that you know, I agree completely with that. You know, because that's not the issue. The issue is not to lock it up. The issue is for people to create, for that to make available and to create a system, to have a system whereby those creators can be remunerated for their work, because that's, you know, that is what is reasonable. That is in essence what copyright is about. The essence is not that you decide that it's be given away for free. The essence is that a creator can be remunerated for the work they have created. You know, and of course a balance needs to be founded, and we are in a shifting situation. Nobody will disagree with that.
May I add to that? I'm currently in the process of reading a dissertation from 1909 on copyright law in the Netherlands and abroad. It's available on archive.org because it's not out of copyright over here in the Netherlands yet. And funnily enough, every argument that has passed in the past 40 minutes over here is already in that book from 1909. Basically, we haven't managed to add anything to this discourse over the period of a century, which in itself proves that the current system is broken.
Yeah, or it's very good.
Well, to me it also indicates that the copyright law wants to do a number of different things that need not necessarily be reconcilable. But maybe we can move to the next...
Just a quick final question to
very quick,
Tim.
because we have a long line. Yeah.
Will you appear in Swedish court to answer a lawsuit against you and your organization?
Which lawsuit would that
The
be?
defamation lawsuit.
And what is the defamation?
About certain claims you made in the press about us DDoSing your website.
No. Okay, well, you know, just between you and me and this audience here, what I said is that the DDoS attack on our site happened 2 days after the press started, after we subpoenaed you basically via Twitter, amongst others via Twitter and Facebook. And, you know, our site has been under attack numerous times, and always after there was a high-profile case. So now this happened after we had subpoenaed you and your partners. So what I said was, you know, this, of course, these are people, fans, supporters of the Pirate Bay. That is what I said, and that is what I think. And you know, you don't think so?
Well, you didn't use the words fans or supporters.
Well, that's, you know, this is what I said, and this is what I repeat. And by the way, your friend, one of your friends, you know, responded to our subpoena by saying, that we were remnants of the Hitlerjugend, neo-Nazis, and people who had gassed Jews. So if we are...
Okay, points are made here.
If we are going to fight, let's fight about what the real issue is, and not this fringe stuff, you know.
Okay, next question. No, you've had your final question. I'm sorry. We're gonna move to the. Okay, thanks. Yeah.
Hi, thank you. I'm here from Hollywood, California, where among other activities I make independent films. And one of the main focuses of what we try to do in making independent films is reducing the cost of it so that we can actually make money on them. We've gotten it down pretty far. I mean, these Sony 3-chip cameras here are a couple $1,000s. You can put everything you need to do in a movie studio, editing and all that in a notebook. The main cost is just the human effort at that point. So I look at this conversation with a great deal of interest because the model is changing and we're looking to see what it's going to be, and I'm looking to you guys to come up with some of the insights of where we're going to put the turnstiles to get the people to see our movies, because we'd love to have 1 million people see them, we'd love to have 1 billion people see them. And we'd love it to be as inexpensive as possible in order to make the money, in order to make more of them, because that's what we like to do.
If you want many people to see your movie, the best way to do it is to put it on Pirate Bay, actually.
I'm sure they're already there, but the point is that doesn't pay us, right? So we don't make another one.
Well, but maybe if I could download your movie in a very nice high quality from Pirate Bay or wherever, in a format that suits me, and then you have a website with a little PayPal button, and I can just do ping, €8. Because if you make a fun movie and I enjoy watching it with a bunch of friends on my HD Beamer with my Hacks Apple TV, then I'd be happy to pay €8. But you have to make it easy.
What you propose is actually very simple and easy, and I think there will be companies that will facilitate that, and I think things like YouTube or one of the other ones will probably do it for us. But the copyright issue is also something to struggle with in the filmmaking process, because we have to do a tremendous amount of research in order to find out what we can do without getting sued. And if we do make any money, if we get 1 million people to pay us €8, then we're going to get sued, guaranteed.
So actually copyright is hurting you a lot more than it's helping you. That's an interesting...
It's both hurting and helping, yes.
Yeah, I understand what you mean, and you know, I'm in favor of a skinny copyright, basically. And I do believe that there are excesses by which indeed you know, companies with capital are overextending the rights that they have acquired. And I do believe in the creative process, and the creative process should be sponsored as much as possible. And a balance needs to be found in there so that you can profit from your copyright and not hindered by it.
So basically we only disagree on where the balance should lie.
That is absolutely correct, yeah.
And basically you say that we should have 10 years to make our €8 as many times as we can, and then your kids can have it for free, and then after that or something.
But that's what he's saying, that's not what I'm saying. I believe that you as a creator should be able to benefit from the long tail, and therefore you should hold your right. And for example, there are movements where it's said, okay, let's hire a company that can do the business for you, but after a certain time that copyright reverts to the original creator, so you can re-energize and also make new deals. And the funny part is you see that already happening with very successful authors. Yeah, there are big corporations who have successful authors under contract, but once these authors start, really, well, once they are successful and have more bargaining power, believe you me, those deals are renegotiated. So there is a lot more flexibility than meets the eye.
Wait a second. We have a long line of people who want to make an intervention or observation or whatever, raise an issue, and we have 15 minutes left. So I think we have to try to speed a little bit up. Okay, so I'm gonna not allow you to say anything. I'm gonna move to the next question if you agree. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm a filmmaker myself, and I want to ask you all to be a bit more realistic about this whole issue. This guy there was from California, if I understood correctly. In Europe, nearly no single film makes any profit. The films are paid by the government, nearly all European countries, and even very, very big production, which are B productions, if we compare it with US American productions, make losses, like Alexander, for example. So I think that if we in Europe destroy the US propaganda, which is coming here from the USA, we lose nothing. And I think it's quite disturbing when you say, excuse me, I don't know your name, I can't remember it, that the single individual and that small filmmakers can profit from the laws that exist because, like I said, the government is paying for the films. So why and how could I, what does copyright give me if I don't make any money of it? I really don't understand. And I think that you are only supporting very big companies who have all the power to acquire new copyrights, not copyrights, but yeah, in US they also can acquire copyrights, what they can't in the EU. So what's in it
your
for
point
me?
is your point is clear, I think, and you raise an interesting issue about the alternative sources of income for creative individuals and groups, and one is indeed much more stressed in Europe, which is subsidies from either government or private companies. Or and what is the relationship between those sources of income is maybe a thing that you raise in your statement.
I don't know if anybody ever here goes to, for instance, ballet or the theater or something like that. None of those things, make money. We choose as a society to publicly fund them, and if we didn't, they wouldn't exist. So I don't think necessarily that's bad. Maybe we spend too much money on certain things, I don't know, but it's not bad to publicly fund arts.
I'm very much against public funding because it breeds elitism, and I'm not sure why we should subsidize classical concerts whereas only the rich people go there. And I would also like to say that there is a certain irony in complaining about the American dominance in this field, because the main drivers behind copyright laws in the United States were European authors complaining about their pirate copies, especially Dickens, Alexandre Dumas, etc. So if we are suffering from American dominance in that respect, we only have our own historical writers to thank for that.
Yeah, I mean, interesting is, of course, that 9 out of 10 US films also make a loss. Then subsidy, yes, that is one way. You have also sponsorship, of course, which again happens by large corporations in general. I don't think that what you say is correct. And the government that uses subsidies is also earning back and sponsorship, that's paying for the funding of these films, is also being paid back then by exportation of those films. And so it's even the government basically, gets, or these bodies that the government creates to fund, get money back. They just take the risk of making the movie out of your hands when you're subsidized. But I also agree that, I wouldn't want to live in a society where the government is deciding which films are being made and not.
Okay, thank you. Next question, please.
Yes, this is for the director of Brein. you've made some statements which nobody could possibly disagree with, like you are for helping the small creator, he needs to be able to profit from his work, and you've also said that the corporations that distribute it, they only want the money so they can create new content. But what you really haven't done is back that up with facts or examples, and I would really like you to do that to show that, for example, the big corporations are not just there for making money, or the actual small people are making money because of your work.
I was just a couple of years ago, I was in a university giving a college about copyright and so on, and in particular enforcement. And one of the guys asked me like, well, do you get hot about pulling people out of their bed because they made copies? What is it that makes you tick? And basically, I am answering the question. Basically, the point is, many people work in that industry. In the Netherlands, 400,000 people work in the industry.
I'm asking you, what are you doing? Not general platitudes. What does your corporation do? How does it help the small people? Not in general terms, specifically. How is the content creator helped by what you do? How is it, and how does it, prevent abuse by big corporations? You're not answering the question.
Okay, we are enforcing copyright, basically by fighting large-scale infringement of copyright. That means that those who have those copyrights, large and small, can exploit their copyrights. That's what we do. Now, how you exploit them, that's your business.
Okay. Next question.
I have a small example. 5 years ago, I copy-edited an anthology of 20th century American poetry. Now, the 20th century, most of the poets that were in this volume are dead, and their copyrights are held by their heirs and successors, literary executors, and corporations. And many of these works, which ranged from 20 lines of poetry to 10 pages of poetry, they wanted egregious licenses. And the naive authors of these works agreed with their major publisher that the license fees would come out of their pockets, not out of the publisher's budget. And in 5 years, they still have not made on their royalties enough to pay back their licensing fees. For example, the Eliot estate, for a work that was about to leave copyright in less than a year, wanted a $20,000 royalty for an absolutely essential work of poetry that needed to be in this work. What do you think that license holder, that copyright owners should be able to charge any amount whatsoever to license their works, and that copyright should extend beyond the natural creator of the work to their heirs and successors and corporations for so long a period of time that scholars can't use this in an economical way?
Okay, before you address this issue, I think we need to collect the questions, comments from the line, and ask that nobody adds to the line. So these questions will all be raised, and you will then respond to those. And that should give us until 6, and then we can end this panel discussion. So thank you for your points. Each of the other 5 also? Okay. So why don't you raise your point concisely, you respond, all 3 of you, to these issues, and then...
Yeah, a question especially for Mr. Tim. In the beginning you said that copyright is basically good because I can decide, like choosing a Creative Commons license and the option that I don't like any commercial or profit use of my work. Why don't you accept the fact that copyrighted works are available like water everywhere, one time published, and say, okay, if it's just about people and private stuff and not about a company or the goal to raise money, we spare out to have all these, you know what your business is, and having all these conflicts and cases in law, and makes these kind of non-commercial use, but in a more public, file-sharing way, as the new balance of copyright.
Okay. Next one, please.
Yes. Well, I prefer new material. We live in a time that I work on a daily basis with people in the United States in milliseconds of time, And when something new comes out, I'll take for example Firefly, I would like to see that now. So here I am with my money, and there it is in the States, and if I want to order it or get it, I get limited. They say, no, there's no law for it, there's no distributor. Why can't I spend my money?
Okay. Thanks. Yeah.
Yeah, wow, this is a question for Mr. Tim Kuyk. I see this opportunity finally ask you a question whenever I'm reading about you in the paper. You're a private company, so that makes you not a law enforcer, but more a collection agent, right? Well, that's because you're a private company, I see you that way. Shouldn't it be, if an organization like this exists, shouldn't it be a governmental organization? So everybody who votes, you know, can influence the company because you're a private company. And, well, add to that a question, how much, I think you know, of how many of the lawsuits you addressed, you threatened people by saying that you were going to sue them and that they had to pay up front. How many of these lawsuits did you win? It's a second question.
Okay, and the final observation from the floor? Yes, please.
I can't remember who it was, but one of you mentioned that you want a new and flexible copyright. When are we going to see a major studio release a work under the Creative Commons?
Okay, thanks. Now I'd like to ask you to take especially these 5 last people's comments, but also reflecting on what has been said during this hour to wrap up this panel. So, Arjen, why don't you start?
Okay. Well, let me just quickly respond then to the last question. I think we're already seeing, even with the major studios, that the financing model for making sort of large movie productions is moving away from the classical, we make it, then people somehow pay for it through movie tickets or DVDs, and then we make the money back. It's moving from that to things like product placement and merchandising and other things. So you're seeing that new revenue streams come in existence, and I could imagine that what is already happening with other things like, for instance, books, which are given away full text without DRM at the moment of publication, could also happen for movies where there's so much to watch on the planet that what somebody who makes a beautiful movie, which is financed by product placement, you can think of, for instance, the latest James Bond movies, actually just wants people to view them, because that's how you make your product placement back, if many people see it. And then it might become logical to just stick it on a Creative Commons license and say, hey, here you can download the full 8 gigabit Blu-ray glory of it. And that could certainly speed up the number of places. The one other point I would like to make, and this goes back to books, I think there is a big sort of, breakdown in thinking about the fact that in order to make money, you need the work to be copyrighted. And so 2 of my personal favorite authors, Charles Stross and Cory Doctorow, they provide most of their books full text without DRM to me at the date of publication, yet I still will buy the book. In fact, I'll buy the hardcover because I know they get paid more that way. And then I'll buy hardcovers to give away for friends. But I actually read it on an e-reader from text I downloaded. So in the whole process, nobody is actually forcing me in any way to give them money. Yet I do it. Why? Because I enjoy the hell out of the books and I want them to write another one.
Okay, thank you.
So they don't actually need copyright because I like their work. It's another model.
Okay. You're being very creative in terms of developing new business models. Tim, want to wrap up from your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with what you say, except for the last part, obviously. That you don't need copyright. I do believe, the honor system, as you mentioned it, is a great system, but, I don't think that works. And the internet and what's happening on the internet actually proves that the honor system doesn't work. As far as, why are we not a government body? There are government bodies involved in enforcement of copyright. They do criminal law, as for example, the Pirate Bay knows. So there will be criminal prosecution going on. We don't do that. We basically defend people's civil rights, ownership rights, intellectual ownership rights, and we do that in a civil way. So we We are paid for by the right owners, and we then take civil law procedures. And actually, in my whole life, I had 2 decisions that were split decisions. And in the history of Brein, I've never lost a case for the past 10 years. How many? We have taken several hundreds of cases. You know, I would have to really go and look it up. Hundreds.
Okay. Arjen, your final words.
Arjen already had his final word, but I would like to say, if people really care so much about the subject, I would invite them to sue content owners that infringe on their rights, because of the changes in enforcement of copyrights, you can recoup the costs of going to court for that. And I would really enjoy to see that happen.
Okay, thank you. I think we need to close this session. It's 6 o'clock. I think the panel has been great. We have hotly debated things, and I would personally very much like to thank the panelists for that. So, Arjen. Tim. And Walter. But most of all, I'd like to thank you for participating. So, thank you.